Good evening, my dear colleagues. Welcome to another INGET Zoom Serious Talk. Today, our guest is Dr. Görsev Sönmez, who is the head of English Translation and Interpreting Department at Istanbul Gelişim University. She also gives courses as a part-time instructor at Marmara University ELT department. Görsev Hocam, before that, in fact, worked at Hasan Kalyoncu University and Biruni University. But tonight, she is our guest speaker. And her title is Classroom Without Borders, Inquiry-Based Language Learning Teaching. Thank you, dear Görsev Hocam, for being with us. And we are looking forward to this session. The screen is all yours.
Thank you so much, Hocam. I am really very much flattered to be invited by you and your organization. I have always tried to follow what you have done for our field, but being a guest here, being a speaker is a very different feeling. I am very much excited. I will try to control my feelings. Please accept if I have any failures or mistakes. Okay, Aydın Hocam and dear colleagues, thank you for attending my session. Thank you for coming. Thank you for spending your valuable time at this time of night. Yes, today, as Aydın Hocam informed, I will talk about inquiry-based language learning and teaching. Why I focus on this issue is not actually very unfamiliar to you, because we are in the period of technology age and our students are generally Z generation students, and we have to keep up to date and we have to follow the recent developments all around the world, and we have to meet their needs actually. And if we continue, if we insist on following some traditional based teacher-centered teaching, unfortunately we will not be adequate for them as language teachers. And in my speech, I will start with a brief introduction. Then I will give you some brief information about the theory and practice of inquiry-based language learning and teaching, and how it can be implemented in a foreign language teaching process. For me, there are lots of subtitles and sub-dimensions of inquiry-based language learning. However, using effective questions to promote students' inquiry skills is a very important subject. That's why I will mention on how to improve ourselves to ask effective questions. And then I will talk about some benefits and challenges. In the implication section, I will try to give you some examples and some interview findings that were conducted by teachers, language teachers, who actively implement inquiry-based learning in their classrooms. And for the introduction, as I have suggested, I have told in the beginning, we are in the 21st century, and 21st century requires different skills, different abilities, not only from teachers, but also from learners from all professional areas. So with the acceleration of technology, we cannot insist on continuing with our well-known good old methodologies, approaches in the field. So new skills like innovative thinking, new skills like information, communication, and technology skills, life and career skills, which are all named under 21st century skills actually. However, to help our students improve their 21st century skills, we have to help them be creative and be investigators, examiners, questioners, inquirers. So this is the only way to support our students become active learners in the 21st century in this technology age. So there are some questions to ask actually. Our educational institutions, our teachers, our teacher education programs, our materials, teaching pedagogy, parents, and most importantly, students, are they really ready for this change? We have to, first of all, start with these questions, I guess. Yes, we can say that we are trying to keep update with some recent developments as educators, as teacher trainers. Our teachers are also very young, recent teachers, novice teachers. They are very much into these kind of developments. But what about the materials? What about the teaching pedagogy that we are implementing in the classrooms? What about parents? Are they really happy with the developments that we try to implement? And what about our students? Can we really meet their needs? And as I have told you, these are Generation Z students who are multitaskers, who have lots of cognitive load because of mostly social media. Actually, they are into listening, watching, texting at the same time. So it is sometimes difficult to feed their needs, actually. So there is lots of things to overcome and to improve ourselves as language educators, teacher trainers. Now, here comes inquiry-based education. I know most of you are very much familiar with this education approach. It is not very common to call it as a methodology, but it is accepted as an approach, actually, because some teachers are very much for the idea of applying this approach in their classrooms, but some of them are not because of their reasons. Actually, we will also talk about it. We can say that inquiry-based education is an approach that follows CLT, communicative language teaching. In communicative language teaching, we all want our students to communicate, to be active, to increase their talking time instead of teacher talking time, to be engaged in activities, project works, group works, peer works. But to what extent can we really manage this? And inquiry-based education with some basic principles help teachers, language teachers, to cope with these kind of problems in the language classroom. Now, as the dictionary definition, inquiry is defined as a systematic investigation of a matter of public interest. Merriam-Webster online dictionary tells us this definition. When it comes to IBL, inquiry-based learning, it is accepted as a learning approach where students are active agents of their own learning process. And in a more recent definition, Lee and Lim defined it as a concept encouraging teachers to involve their students in exploring problems close to real life. So there are some key concepts that we have to underline here. First of all, as I have told you, it is an approach. Secondly, active agent. Students are accepted as active and they are the agents. They are the major characters in the language learning process, and they are responsible for their own learning. So instead of being spoon-fed, instead of teaching them the language, teaching them how to learn the language is the idea underlying this approach, actually. And another important point is about language teachers. Language teachers should be encouraged to implement this approach in their classrooms because we are not used to this kind of a recent trend, actually. You know, in our field, Lorty says that apprenticeship of observation in our profession is very long. Maybe it has the longest period of apprenticeship of observation. And we witness lots of teachers throughout our studentship. And sometimes we tend to take them as role models. And the research shows us that even though we take the necessary education in our teacher education programs, even though we are instructed about recent developments, language teachers tend to teach in the way they learned language. It is a very common attitude, actually. So it is not very easy for language teachers to implement a very recent and rarely tried approach in their classrooms. So maybe putting it as a picture in front of us can make us more aware of the differences, distinctions between traditional language teaching and inquiry-based teaching. Now, the principal learning theory underlying traditional approaches is behaviorism. However, for inquiry-based education, it is constructivism, which gives lots of importance to students' own construction of meaning. And students are active agents, as I have told, in the inquiry-based learning. However, in traditional language learning, they are generally passive. Students have the increased responsibility in inquiry-based education, and they have the role of problem solvers. And it is a process-oriented language education instead of product-oriented one. And teachers are generally the guides, the facilitators, instead of being directors, controllers, and transmitters of knowledge. So this is maybe this table is also enough to understand the benefits of inquiry-based teaching in our classrooms. But I have to start with a brief historical information because it dates back in the second half of 20th century. It was first implemented in Manchester University Arts and Science program for junior students in 1980. Jenkins explains it. And how was IBL implemented? There were small groups of students in the Arts and Science program, and teachers from different faculties worked in collaboration. They planned and delivered the instruction. So in an interdisciplinary manner, they planned and organized the theme of that week, and they implemented it in their classrooms. The outcome of this study, of this procedure, was learning deeply, thinking critically, active control, precise, accurate, and clear in communication in a participatory fashion. So in 1980s, University of Manchester started implementing this approach in their classes. The thing that we should underline is collaboration among teachers from different disciplines. If we want our students to become inquirers, they have to work interdisciplinary. I am sure most of you are familiar with international baccalaureate program, IB programs. These IB programs underline always interdisciplinary work, and they underline thematic work and active collaboration of teachers from different disciplines. And they also underline students being agents in the learning process. So actually, this is not something very much different from the well-known methodologies. So it is a combination, we can say. It is a combination, but a very well-structured and good combination. Now, maybe underlining some basic and major features of inquiry-based learning can be good. It is learner-centered, inquiry-oriented, and it requires active and purposeful participation of students, construction of interdisciplinary knowledge in collaboration, cooperation, and interaction, and most importantly, it focuses on authentic learning instead of fake, instead of unrealistic environments of language. It requires authentic learning environment. That's why I named my presentation as Classroom Without Borders, because we cannot place every authentic environment in a room. It is impossible. So what should we do? We have to take our students out of our classrooms. We should place them in natural environment and help them become inquirers in those environments. Now, we can call it as a high quality pedagogy. I will not only mention teachers here, but also students. We have talked about what kind of responsibilities teachers and students have in such an approach in a classroom where this approach is implemented. But there are something that we have to focus on. For example, providing opportunities for students outside of the classroom. How many of us really provide some opportunities out of the class to help them learn language in an authentic environment? Or how many of us connect our students to experts, for example, and community members that can support their projects? I remember when I was a high school student, I was in Safranbolu. I am from Safranbolu, and our language teachers generally assign homework or interview assignments for us to find a tourist in a historical place, go and make an interview with them, ask some questions. It is actually a kind of a trial to help us use language in an authentic environment. They even tried it, right? And now the conditions, situations are much more appropriate, and there are lots of opportunities for us to take the language learning out of our classrooms. And another important point is we have to help our students to be critical and reflective in their learning process. They do active work. They are agents. They have the responsibilities. They complete some projects. They do lots of assignments. But what about their reflection on the process of that project? What about their feelings? Do we really ask them what kind of difficulties did they have during that process? Or do we really ask them to be open to their friends about the critical points that they can also criticize themselves? Do they really keep the mirror to themselves? So this is unfortunately very much ignored. Even though we claim that, most of us claim that we are applying communicative language teaching in our classrooms. Yes, we try, we do our best, but do we really keep our students that active? And higher order thinking skills is not easy to improve in our students. Being critical, being reflective, being problem solver, being a risk taker. So the basic foundations of this high quality pedagogy are all depending on these kind of higher order thinking skills actually. And when it comes to implementation and application of inquiry-based learning in the field, there are different types of inquiries suggested that can be implemented in the learning process. It starts from structured and ends with open inquiry. As we can all understand, in the structured type of inquiry, a research problem is assigned by the teacher, necessary materials and procedures to follow, again, provided by the teacher, and the teacher aims to help learners acquire new concepts, skills, reflection, and experience. In the guided one, semi-structured, we can also say, again, the teacher assigns the research problem, but this time students are required to develop their own procedures to reach a solution. They are not provided with the direct guidance, direct procedure. And the aim here is to help learners develop creativity, research skills, and detailed understanding. When it comes to open inquiry, students are responsible for every step. They have to find their problem, they have to plan a research design, they will investigate, they will reach the resources, they will do the detailed research, and they will find a solution for their problem in an independent manner. Here, the aim is very obvious, increasing their higher order thinking skills and creativity. And inquiry-based learning in foreign language education is a very recent and common trend, actually, especially with the application and widespread of IB in private schools. Inquiry-based language learning started to be preferred very frequently and very widely. Of course, innovations in methods, widespread use of communicative language teaching, changing roles of students, teachers, school principals, all parties in the educational field, and the distinctive strategies, the distinctive learning styles that the students bring to the classroom as a result of and the effect of their generation. Cognitive approach and constructivism started to be paid a lot of attention, and as a result, inquiry-based language education started to be paid more attention. Of course, as it is the case in every inquiry process, in every research process, there is a cycle. And this cycle is one of the most commonly used one. First of all, we expect our students to ask a question, to start with a problem. Then we guide them towards investigation, guide them to find the adequate materials. They create their own procedure, they find a solution, they discuss it depending on the research that they have done, and most importantly, they have to be required to reflect upon the procedure. Why? Because we started with 21st century skills. In 21st century skills, critical thinking, reflection, being innovative, being a researcher identity are most common ones that we have to teach our students. And how to employ inquiry-based learning in foreign language education is very common. Now, questioning, question answer, higher order thinking skills all require these concepts. First of all, the students should wonder. They have to be curious about anything around them. They have to investigate. When they're investigating, planning, reading, researching, fieldwork, interviews, they go out of their classrooms. They record the data that they gather. We are not always talking about numerical data. We are not talking about statistical data. Any kind of interview is data for them as well. Unofficial negotiations, they record, they discover, new information, they discover knowledge, they discover recent opinions, ideas, and most importantly, they think. They think on the discovery, what they have discovered, and they start trying to find a solution. And as a result, they reflect. In their reflection, they revise, they improvise, they conclude, they rethink over and over. Of course, how? By the active guidance of language teacher. We are not all passive. It is a very tiring job, actually. Now, one of the most frequently asked questions is, what can we teach through active implementation or application of inquiry-based learning in a language classroom? My dear colleagues, we can teach everything, but most commonly uttered areas are vocabulary, negotiation of meaning, discovering the embedded cultural essence, acquisition of structure, and theme-based issues, if we also manage to work interdisciplinary. We can also teach many other things, but these are the most commonly stated and applied areas. In the beginning of the session, I told you that being an effective questioner is very important. As language teachers, we have to know how to direct our students to the problem. How can we help them to find a problem? Our questions will help them to go through that way. And we generally tend to ask yes/no questions in the classrooms. However, my professor at Yeditepe University, Dr. Hüseyin Farhadi, always for the idea of asking thought-provoking questions. It is a great label, actually. TPQs, we call them as TPQs. Thought-provoking questions, asking thought-provoking questions is not an easy task because the answer is not exact. The answer is not there or there. The students have to think. Among these question types, echoic questions, epistemic questions, referential questions, display questions, I am sure all of us use these questions in our classrooms very frequently. But I am for the idea of making use of referential questions more frequently, because it is the way to make our students relate the context with their personal lives. And echoic questions do not ask for an answer, they echo. Epistemic questions from the exact text, display questions, the answer is there. But referential questions, when it comes to referential questions, just like TPQs, they have to reflect their personal backgrounds, personal experiences into the classroom. And the only way to answer these type of questions is this. And again, to promote effective question delivery, Bloom's taxonomy and revised taxonomy have been suggested to apply. Why they are suggested? As we all know, in Bloom's taxonomy, it starts with knowledge and it goes through evaluation. So not only asking knowledge-based questions, but we have to increase the level of our questions to ask our students evaluate something, think over something, reflect upon something. Making analysis and synthesis is very important. So when I ask my students to summarize a text, a 500 word text with only 50 words, they start shaking because they do not know how to make analysis. They do not know how to put it in a simple way. They do not know how to be critical thinker over the text. Again, in literary analysis course, for example, in my literary analysis course, when I ask the main idea, they stand still because they are not used to thinking critically again. So starting from knowledge-based questions, we should go through evaluation-based questions as suggested by Bloom, actually. Now, I will share some examples related to application of inquiry-based learning in language classrooms. Lee, in 2014, shared some examples of applying IBL in language classrooms. For example, the teacher announces that there is a great concert in town. Let students get more information about it by asking questions in the target language, such as, when is the concert? What kind or whose concert is it? Where is it? How much is the admission? How can I get there? Who is interested in attending this event? Why? You can apply it in the classroom with such very basic questions, of which answers are obvious or not obvious. You can also ask your students to go and ask these questions to a family member or to a friend out of the classroom as well. Another example again by Lee, a series of questions can be applied to the topic of shopping, for example, in a supermarket, from single information seeking to the solicitation of opinions and comments. Ask students to name items. What do you have for breakfast? What stuff will you prepare for a birthday party? Where can these things be purchased? What supermarkets do you have in your neighborhood? Which one do you like most? Why? And these are not very difficult tasks, actually. The only thing is to be aware of how to take language out of the classroom in an authentic manner. Sometimes the students come with some questions, with some concerns about the difficulty of taking students out of the classroom as a group. Yes, it is a big responsibility. Maybe as a teacher, you cannot manage it yourself, but you can assign it to families, because we always say that collaboration among parents, students, and teachers is a very important triangle. So we should know how to integrate and involve parents into our language learning process as well. For the I don't know, Hocam, do we have time? I'm so sorry. Okay, we have, I guess.
Yes, we do have time. If you want me, I can remind you of the time, Hocam.
Thank you so much. Maybe when we have 10 minutes, if you can, I will.
Sure, I will. Sure, I will.
Here, there is a website. Can you see it, by the way? Can you see my screen? Okay, great. Now here, inquiry-based learning in English classrooms, there is a procedure which is applied by a language school, actually. They apply IBL projects in the English classroom in 5 steps. In the first step, you can read the details afterwards, but I will just share the steps with you. First of all, students have to propose a project proposal. Start with a project proposal. They should have the opportunity to shape their focus questions and projects via a project proposal. And the second step is doing research and learning. So in this phase, they have to make a deep research which fits beautifully into any language curriculum as mini lessons on proper research techniques, gathering and documenting sources. And then the third step is creating, or we can call it as doing. So this is where IBL projects differ from traditional research projects. They ask students to either create, experience, or do something with their learning. And the beauty of IBL projects in English language arts is that the project topic and physical result don't have to have anything to do with English class. It can be any other field. The important point is making students use their language in varying fields. This is the best side of inquiry-based language learning. We always tell that it should be interdisciplinary. It can be about anything. It can be about mathematics, science, arts, theater, music, anything. But they have to make active use of their language. And in the fourth step, they have to reflect upon the process. Discuss your project focus question. Why you choose that topic? Reflect. Review the research you conducted. How or what were the difficulties during your research? Explain how you used your research to create an action or experience. Reflect on whether or not your project was a success, according to you. And the last step is sharing an assessment. Now, they have to present their projects, like portfolio presentation or poster presentation to their parents, to their friends, like an exhibition, and they are assessed not only from their product, but also the process, just like we do in alternative assessment, actually. Okay, now I will turn back. Okay, and before talking about frequently asked questions regarding inquiry-based language learning, we have talked about many benefits, but there are, of course, some challenges as well. I do not like to call them as drawbacks. For me, they are challenges. They can be overcome. It requires some energy, it requires some effort, some time, but they can be overcome, actually. What are the challenges? First of all, it requires knowledge and skill. Both the teachers and the students should be skillful and knowledgeable regarding application. It requires pedagogical sophistication to manage inquiry process, because you're not only instructing and leaving the classroom, you are always following the students' progress through individual conferences or with group discussions. You have to measure the quality of inquiry. Is it really necessary to have very successful, very beautiful inquiries? It's not, but it should be quality, high quality. How can we assess the quality of a project? First of all, we should assess the effort of the student. We should know that the student is really spending time on his or her own learning process, and using discourse and discussion to encourage more effective inquiry-based learning. These are the challenges, but as you see on the screen, benefits are much more than the challenges. We have all talked about them. That's why I do not want to repeat, actually. And when I'm coming towards the end, there are some frequently asked questions. Sometimes I share my ideas about this approach with my colleagues and students of English language teaching, and they come up with these questions. I wanted to share them with you and the answers of some teachers who actively apply IBL in their language classrooms. One of the common questions is this: How do I teach my students necessary grammar and vocabulary by the help of inquiry-based learning? Since we are very much grammar freak, since we are very much structure freak as language teachers, they want to teach it. Actually, the institutions require teachers to teach grammar in their classrooms. I do not accuse the teachers all the time about it, actually. Yeah, the answer is very clear-cut. If you need to cover a lot of ground with your students because they need to study for an exam or because they still need to learn the basics, it is a good idea to mix things up between traditional lessons and inquiry-based activities. So in your traditional lessons, you can do the prep work by teaching grammar and vocabulary, and during the active learning phase, your students can experiment with the newly learned language by using it freely. So you meet both needs, not only their will, but also your desire to direct them become inquirers, researchers. Another question: how does this method affect the students' motivation and participation? Lots of research studies conducted in our country show us that students do not like language learning through CLT, communicative language teaching. They don't like it very much. I also conducted a study with 1,000 students, 1,000 university prep students, and they, most of them, around 67% of them, told that they are not used to that way of language learning or learning. They are not used to being active in the classrooms. They were always asked to be quiet in the classroom. They were always assigned individual assignments, homeworks, and the most important point in their previous classes were being silent under discipline. So coming from such a tradition, of course, prevents them being used to communicative language teaching. Now, the answer is here. Since the students come up with their own ideas and questions that they want answers to, their motivation is quite high to begin with, actually. For example, you can have your students conduct interviews or polls. In this case, the students would choose the questions they want answers to. Interview people, present the answers to their classmates, decide what to ask next based on what they found out. So giving the responsibility to the students is very important. And another one, can you recommend inquiry-based learning for both in-person and online classes? Now, you know, online classes are very fashionable, and for me, lockdown process is a kind of a trial for online classes. I guess it will be much more common in the following 10 years, actually, because of lots of other reasons. One of the teachers who tried it in both ways gave this answer. Since inquiry-based active learning relies a lot on the students' direct communication and flexible cooperation, I have been using this method only in the physical classroom so far. However, I can imagine that it could work very well for an online class too if you create a kind of internet cast, make a virtual treasure hunt, for example, or ask your students to write a profile on their favorite singer, musician, actor, actress. I am also for this idea too, because being a researcher, being an investigator, being an inquirer is not about being in the face-to-face or in-person environment. You can assign the project, you can get the answers, you can organize the project phases, procedure online as well. And another question and answer, does the method work for any level of English learners? So can we make use of IBL with young learners as well, with tertiary level students? It does. It does. And the teacher says, I am teaching 12-year-old junior high school students right now, and their English is still at a beginner's level, which is very much common to us. However, they are trying very hard to use English in order to communicate with each other and to write reports for their presentations. Of course, we are not expecting high-level, high-quality reports from them, high-level projects from them. We can or we should have the necessary pedagogy to fine-tune our projects, the problems, the questions that and the procedure that they have to pass through. For example, if you have a class of intermediate or even advanced level students, I think you can have great time ahead of you with this learning method. Depending on their level of English, your students will explore the English they know and will become more confident in their English communication skills. And another question, do you have any advice for TEFL TESOL teachers who are new to using inquiry-based learning in their classes? The first thing that can be told to teachers is enjoy the lesson with your students, because it is really enjoyable. It is not something direct. It is not something traditional. You are sharing information. You are learning all together. You are cooperating, participating. You are one of the group members as the language teacher, and you can enjoy with your students. Some teachers feel that they are not needed if they are not standing in front of the class, if they are not the authority in the class. Because this is what we observe throughout our studentship. However, this is not the case. Taking on the role of a facilitator is really rewarding, as it allows you to observe your students very closely, get a feeling for their progress, promote students' talking time, and last but not least, share the explorative classroom atmosphere with the students. To wrap up, I am coming to the end. The active pace of inquiry-based lessons usually gets your students moving, talking, and problem solving. It is best to pick a topic or a problem that targets your students' interest, that is age and level appropriate, of course, and that at the same time gives your students a chance to explore and use English in a natural way. Okay, my dear colleagues, thank you for listening. Of course, there are lots of things to talk about this issue, but I tried my best to create an intensive and compact presentation about it. I am here for your questions.
Thank you very much, Görsel Hocam. This was a great presentation, thought-provoking. In fact, we had a wonderful discussion in the chat box.
Really?
Yes, it's a kind of a pirate discussion. You missed that discussion.
But I could follow it.
You know what? What was striking for me was to hear how much we feel happy when an instruction model focuses on thinking, which in fact is a kind of a nerve-wracking situation, because we are human beings. I mean, we should be thinking anyways.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So we were talking about what did we do wrong to give our students the wrong idea that thinking is something fascinating, new, something fancy, you know. So that was the discussion. Hocam, Shulenur Hocam has a question here that I want to read for you. It reads as, is it possible to integrate IBL into skills teaching?
Definitely, in every field, in every subfield, actually, we never think of language in discrete points. We always accept it as a whole picture. And skills it cannot be taught as a separate section of language, of course. But when you are assigning students a project, a problem to solve, they are integrating all language skills. They have to write, they have to talk, discuss, they have to speak, they have to tell, reflect, think actively, they have to listen each other. So they are activating all their language skills when they're involved in any kind of project, actually.
Can we also say that they also activate their academic skills?
Sure.
Regardless of their age or level, because they are cooperating, collaborating, researching, reporting.
This is what all 21st century skills is about, actually, Hocam.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Görsev Hocam, people, our colleagues, our participants are thanking you, claiming that it was a great, excellent presentation, amazing presentation. You should see the chat box.
Thank you so much.
It is full of hearts and kisses and love and hugs, you know.
I see them. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Really kind of you. Thank you.
And someone, let me see who, Perim Hocam calls you a walking miracle. Wow. Okay.
Former student, now my colleague. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hocam, I have one. It's not a question, but it may, please take it as a comment and question embedded.
Okay.
Our students, as you have mentioned, come from a particular school background.
Yes.
Which is not very productive and creative.
Unfortunately.
Where they were kind of taught to keep silent, not to question anything that they are given, memorize, pass the exams, whatever. But if they are lucky, of course, they find themselves in programs where they have inquiry-based learning or skills-based learning or whatever.
Yes.
But if they are not lucky, when they come to tertiary level, this is the first time they encounter this model. Do you think that they need some training to change their mind, to change their attitude, to take responsibility for their learning, to reflect? Or is it something that they can develop, by themselves, slowly? So is there any training required? Or can it be learned, or can it be acquired, by themselves?
No, I don't know, John. You might remember in the presentation, I have talked about 3 types of inquiry. One of them is structured, semi-structured, and open one. If the students are not used to such an environment or such an approach, starting with a structured inquiry type is the best method, actually. Assigning them the problem at first. Or I always suggest teachers to think aloud how to find a problem when they are writing something. If you are teaching writing, think aloud when you are writing or modeling writing, for example. So making group works with students and taking active participation in those groups and showing them how you find a problem, how you reach the resources. And once they observe, once they enjoy the process, they will get used to. Of course, it will take time. It is not a one-shot issue. It takes time for them to get used to. But starting with a structured type of inquiry process can be beneficial or helpful for them, I guess.
Okay, so starting with a structured inquiry, but the teacher is also being a model,
Definitely.
thinking aloud.
An active participant.
Yes, exhibiting how to act, think. Oh my God, can you imagine? We get together to talk about how to model thinking. Where is the world going to, God?
Another strategy can be, Hocam, so sorry for interrupting. Another strategy can be maybe calling previous students, inviting them to your classroom and asking them the process they have went through in their previous years can be helpful as well.
Sabriye Hocam has a wonderful point. Can you see it in the chat box, Hocam?
Definitely.
It says, firstly, teachers themselves may need some training and practice.
Is one of the, and for me, most important challenge of this approach, because it requires teachers to be knowledgeable and skillful. So teachers should know how to think, how to criticize, how to reflect themselves. As a think about a writing teacher, if a teacher cannot write himself or herself, how can he teach it? So we should be skillful. We should be well equipped, first of all, then we can, of course, teach it.
Well, in fact, in my session today, I said, if we want our students to change, I think we need to change first. So unless we are ready to say farewell to our traditional role to being the preacher in the classroom, to be the sage on the stage, as Işıl Hocam has mentioned, we will not be very successful with this model, because we need to know when to shut up, you know, when to give the stage to them. So I guess we also will have some resistance with that.
Yeah.
Işıl Hocam has a wonderful point. By the way, my dear colleagues, if you want to ask your own question or say your own remark or comment, please unmute yourself one by one, of course, or raise your hand and say it yourself. Işıl Hocam, would you like to mention this yourself? Do you have then access to a mic, or do you want me to read it? You can write it in the chat box. Oh, okay.
Could you please do it for me?
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course, of course. Işıl Hocam says, flipped classes encourage students to get into discussions in the class. Can flipped model be conducive to IBL2 then?
Definitely. Actually, it is very appropriate. Flipped classrooms require students to get ready prior to their classes, and coming to the class, having read the instructions or having read the readings can help them to come ready to the class with the problems in their minds, actually. So the classroom turns out to be an IBL place. Problems are there, students already understood, and they have to reach the solution by the help of the materials, research, the teacher, guidance. So it is a very live environment to inquire, actually. For me, it is very applicable.
Okay. Fahime Hocam, am I pronouncing your name correctly? If not, I'm very sorry. Please go ahead.
Hi,
it's good to be a part of this. Hello, Dr. Görsel. How are you? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for
nice and fruitful presentation. That, as I wrote at the beginning, it's like a nutshell. You put everything we need in this century and cover it with this approach. I really appreciate that. That's all. I just wanted to show my appreciation, and I'm really happy
Thank
to
you.
be
Thank you. It's very kind of you. Thank you, Fahima. So I am a language teacher, and in such events, occasions, I always look for some practical ideas instead of literature-based discussions, because literature is there, but I have to learn how to apply it. And I have to learn the challenges, how to overcome them, some strategies. That's why I am one of the language teachers like you are, and that's why I try to meet that need actually.
Hocam, you did it indeed, because especially in the last slides, frequently asked questions, the techniques, how we should teach it to different levels. I've been to so many webinars, Hocam, so I really mean it when I say it's a really fruitful presentation.
Thank you so
much.
Thank you, Fahima.
By the way, if you would like to watch this again, the video will be released next week on Saturday. So if you want to listen to it again, or if you have missed that point and if you would like to see the slides again, you can definitely watch the video on our İnget Türkiye YouTube channel.
And also, if any of my colleagues ask for the presentation, I can definitely share it. Just email.
Yes.
Just email.
Please use the presentation ethically, though.
Sure.
Yeah, we have had some bad experiences, so I had to warn people. Any other points? Well, there are excellent points, in fact, in the chat box, but they are not actual questions. So I don't know. I don't think that we need to go through that. You have already seen them. Is there anything that you would like to add? Yourself, Hocam?
For me, no. I really enjoyed the webinar. It was again very good to be part of this group of colleagues. And Hocam, you are doing a great job for our country, both nationally and internationally. I just want to thank you because being a bridge between the practice and theory is not an easy task, and you're managing it very well for years, and from now on you will continue for sure. Thank you for inviting me, and I would love to do whatever I can for you whenever you want, Hocam. Thank you for my whole colleagues being with me.
Thank you very much. In fact, as you know, İnget has a wonderful motto. I love the motto. It says, together we stand.
Definitely.
Because I don't know any scientific resource which can feed us with the information that we need, but our colleagues.
Yeah.
Because they have already experienced that in the classroom. They have already lived through the difficulty, the resistance, the problems, the issues in the classroom. So they can feed us with the necessary piece of information or knowledge that we need. That's why we will keep sharing and caring for each other. And Görsel Hocam, it was a pleasure to have you with us. I want to express my gratitude on behalf of İnget, of course, and hopefully we will do other things together for our association.
Sure.
And as usual, my colleagues, these events, these activities, these sessions cannot survive without your support. Thank you very much for participating, for sharing your invaluable opinions with us. And
thank you.
I hope to see you again the following week, because next week, as you know, we have our wonderful National Bayram coming.
Yes.
29th of October. Woo! We're going to celebrate. So we won't have a session next week, but the following week we will have another great practitioner academic,
Yes.
teacher, whatever you want to call, with us. Görse hocam, thanks a million. Take
Thank
care.
you, hocam. Thank you.
And
Take
my dear colleagues, bye-bye. Take
you.
good care of yourselves.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.